Good afternoon to you, Scott Baker.
Mikey, how are you? It's the 2nd of November, Sunday afternoon. We're talking about today's Field Note from Admired Leadership. And the title of the one today, it's Field Note number 1606, is Getting a Head Start. Simple, short, one of our shortest headlines, I think, ever. But the point is good. And I will tell you the story about it. But the idea is the competitive advantage of being a first mover. Don't always want to be the first mover, but if you're going to be the first mover, how do you engineer that? How do you think about it in a way that really does give you a head start on everybody else? That's the challenge here.
Right. And we've got a story about Robert Taylor that illustrates this. And, as we go through the story, which is a great story.
I don't think it seems like a famous story, but somehow I don't think I'd really heard it before.
I had missed it, right? So maybe we should tell it like a first person kind of thing.
Sure. Go for it.
Robert Taylor was a creator in Minneapolis, and
by creator, we're not talking about a social media.
No.
It's not a social media content.
No, this was
creator.
back in the 60s. And so,
yes, right.
An inventor, right?
Yeah.
So a guy
who actually really created stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the company that he created that he started is called the Minnetonka Company.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time he was competing with big guys, right? So it was Colgate and Palmolive, right? These big companies that feel like there's no way to really compete with these people because no matter what they do, you're gonna. And people these days have the similar type of thing. Like whatever you build, someone is going to rapidly replicate that out of Chinese manufacturing, turn it into plastic and make it for cheaper. So, but within 15 years, he'd successfully launched his first anti-plaque toothpaste, right? And because it was first to market, he thought, oh, this is fantastic. But within a few years, all the other toothpaste companies came out with their own. And so the fact that he was first to market didn't amount to anything. Right.
And by the way, one of the key phrases there was 15 years.
Yes.
Before he's even trying to get his first big product. He's making consumer products, chugging along, maybe a little bit here, a little bit there. Now here you go. Here's a big chance.
So on this one, he took a big gamble. He had been robbed a couple times, right? But he's like, okay, I've got this idea around soft soap. No one else is doing soft soap. Everyone else has bars of soap. No one else has liquid soap, right? No one else has turned it into liquid. And it's this genius idea that he's like, why has no one else thought about this?
Yeah.
But he thought to himself, I don't want to get, shafted like I have with perfume and toothpaste in the past. So
because the big guys would just come in and copy it if it was successful and then just wipe it out. Yeah.
So he made a big gamble and he decided that he was going to buy up all of the soap dispensers. Like he understood in order to get soft soap out, it needs to be dispensed with a pump that is wide enough that it's not going to be gunked up. So the width of it was something that he could only find in certain things. Like not everyone was making stuff like that.
And by the way, today we all use a dispenser like that, and we never even think about it, like the uniqueness of the thing that dispenses the soft soap of any kind.
And today you could also get that replicated out of a Chinese manufacturing plant within a month. But at the time, it was something that was specialty made. So he decided it's going to take a year for people to actually get a product like this pump online. So instead of me just fretting over whether or not they're going to replicate my product, I'm going to prevent them from even doing it. And I'm going to buy 100 million pump dispensers from
the whole stock out there.
From the only two U.S. manufacturers in the time who are actually made. And he had to spend $12 million in order to do it, right? Which represented more than a year's production capacity. So it prevented rivals, because at the time when you've only got two people who in the United States that are doing this, and you don't have a supply chain coming out of China with the way that trade worked in the 80s, that he was really handcuffing everybody else in the industry by being the only one who had. And can you imagine? You think that that Colgate and Palmolive were probably like, and they probably, how much money did they waste trying to put liquid soap through tubes that were too small, right? They absolutely wasted a bunch of time being able to do that because they couldn't get tubes that were big enough to be able to do that. So as a result of that, Soft Soap, which was the brand, right, put itself in a position where the only way that Colgate and Palmolive could compete was by making a huge acquisition, which is what
put them 2 years behind. Yeah.
Which is what Robert wanted in the first place, right?
Yep.
And so to actually get paid for his invention,
yes, right,
instead of getting robbed via it just being replicated. So what a great example. And you're right. I've never heard that story outlined before. We should probably go back and get good at telling the story, because I think that story by itself would probably go viral online. Like, this is an example of the way that we should create our own head start with this viral story, because no one else has kind of done it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and there are examples of that all the time, good and bad. Like we're seeing lots of things now where different plants or companies in China have cornered the market on a specific rare earth metal or something, where it's the only place to get that's needed for all the semiconductors in the world, or not at trivial levels. But an example this year that I was thinking about, just when we were talking about Robert Taylor's soft soap, there's a new protein bar called David. And it's by the guy that created the RX bar. And so those are familiar. You see them everywhere.
Because he sold out his RX brand to someone else?
He sold out the RX bar, waited out his non-compete. And I think he had been actually planning to not do very much after that, because he sold the company for $600 million, he and his partner. And but then he got back in to think about, like, well, could I do this in a different way? And he created this RX bar, or this David bar, which has 28 grams of protein. It's 150 calories. So trying to get to the 150 calorie mark, which he felt was really important to advertise to a certain market segment, but it required a discipline and a particular ingredient of a new, I believe it was a kind of fat that's used in the making of this bar, which is not a high fat bar, but it was an essential ingredient for this. Now, there are other bars out there that were playing around with it. Yeah.
To clarify, the fat is the thing that allowed you to have enough density in the food, but low enough calorie.
Probably some piece of that. Don't fact check me on everything, because I did not prep this for the moment. I didn't research it before we went on. I just thought of it when we were talking about it. I will sometimes use some of these David bars. I don't use a lot of protein bars, or I like to have whole foods as best I can. But sometimes if you're going to be on an airplane or something and you want to combine a few things, you do that. And so in the process, what he did though was they ended up they bought the company, the only company that made this particular ingredient. Well, there were other people that were like watching. Peter Attia is a big investor into this David bar, other big high profile influencers. And there were other competitors that all of a sudden found themselves, they couldn't even get the product. And the David bar actually came off the market. Like, you couldn't even order it online for 6 months. Like, they took, because the supply was in jeopardy because of the manufacturing capability of that plant. Well, this launch of this bar was so successful, but they bought the factory. And then the Wall Street Journal did an article, I think, the other day about how some of the other ones that were using it in their food products were like, wait a minute, what happened to our ingredient? Well, all of us know we could be mad about our competitor.
Yeah.
But if we're using something that can only be purchased or acquired from one place, that's a problem. So a leader, not only here, the part of the lesson why I was telling this story, it's great victory for the David bar, terrible if you're one of the other people. But part of the lesson here is, if you're a Robert Taylor, you're thinking ahead, which is, I'm actually going to not roll out my product. I don't want people to know about my product until I've already purchased and cornered the market, right, on the specific thing I need. And then if you're anybody that's saying, well, we're going to do this, but we have to do that only using this, you don't want your business model to be dependent on one thing if you don't control that thing, if you don't have multiple options. So the part of this is that the job of being a leader and developing good strategy around any kind of product launch is really tricky and really difficult. But you can learn lessons here that might give you a chance to actually jump ahead of everybody else and get that fast start.
Right. Okay. So can you do this in marketing? Right? Because oftentimes you have the same type of thing. You've got a great idea, catch slogan, a concept on a humorous video, right? Something that would be meme worthy. You figure everyone's going to be doing this, everyone's going to capitalize on it. And I don't want other people to do it a little better than we're doing
Right.
it.
Well, we were joking this week. It's like, obviously in the last month or two, some things only have a very short lifespan. And so if you weren't making a 6-7 related meme reference in another 3 or 4 weeks, it won't matter. That'll be too old to actually matter. There are things that have a little longer shelf life, but yes, I do think in marketing and being able to corner mind space around a particular sort of vibe is crucial.
Right. So the kids who were doing 6-7 going crazy over it probably didn't have enough disposable income to create a market around selling stuff to them, because it was like high schoolers were kind of making fun of it. They couldn't believe that junior hires were going crazy over it. So it was, in my mind, it was like the first like real junior high meme that went crazy.
It was a bit of a junior, yeah. And I have a junior middle schooler who just, this is hysterical to them. And now you had a top government official yesterday wearing a Halloween costume built around 6-7.
Yeah, I had a friend who did the same. I don't know what the one you're referencing. My friend dressed up as the number 7 and then had a thermometer in their mouth like she was sick. So she was,
I get it.
She was a 6-7,
right?
And it was so funny.
So the but let's talk about two parts of this that I'm wrestling with, because I am a big believer in this idea that first mover getting in there can be the way. Now we also know that sometimes people jump too fast on technology, right? And I've given the example before when I was working in television in the Hearst Corporation, and sort of blogging was first starting back in the day. And there was other sort of distributed content technologies, and a chief financial officer for the Hearst Corporation was visiting our TV station, and people were like, well, aren't we going to do this? Aren't we going to do this? And I'm using this because I think it's still true, which is the illustration he said was, well, when the settlers were moving across the United States back in the day, and they could see the Rocky Mountains a long time before they got to the Rocky Mountains. And he said, just because the future is clear doesn't mean that it is near. And many people will jump too soon. They won't see all of the difficulties and financing and all the pieces. And a lot of those people will fail, but we're going to buy up the best ideas in their failure for bargains. And even on our own company, we'll often say, well, we should be thinking about this. And some of the partners will be like, we don't want to be the first on this. Now, there's other things where we do want to be the first. And, we have our own AI, for example, Alex, our leadership AI, and we've been working on that for 3 years, right? So the team that began working on that, well, at least 2.5 years, probably started in the summer of 2023.
Yes.
And so the head start on that, because we see lots of other leadership AIs out there now, and they may have a slick feature here or there. They don't have anything near the capacity of what, certainly beyond content. Like, we believe our content is really powerful, and our AI is built on that proprietary content. It's enormously powerful. Lots of top executives are using it all the time. And we're seeing companies that are bringing on thousands and thousands, if not tens of thousands of people to use that proprietary AI. Part of it was we did move fast to become sort of the dominant actor in that particular proprietary space. Other technologies are going to say, we don't want to spend that money on this to try to figure out something that's going to become ubiquitous, because somebody else is going to figure that out.
Yeah. It's amazing when you hear the number of businesses who are intentionally not innovative, right?
Yes,
I remember in high school, my dad, who works for a large bank on the West Coast, he told me something that his CEO said to them, because I was suggesting some kind of product that, and I was a kid, but I was like, why doesn't your bank do that?
Yeah.
And my dad said, we're not innovative. We intentionally are not innovative. Like, we let all our competitors innovate, and we are close followers. That's what we did. McDonald's is kind of famously the same way. They spend a whole lot of money researching real estate and where places are emerging, and they've got people who spend millions and millions of dollars just trying to understand how demographics are growing and where populations are, and understanding where they can be the first. Burger King doesn't spend any money on that money. They just follow McDonald's to the corner across the street, right?
Yeah, right.
So it's kind of incredible how you can do that. But if you're in a spot where you are going to be first, you need to consider this idea. If you're going to be first, how can we be super first?
And I think that in some ways the lesson of the field note seems to be, it's maybe not who's first, it's maybe who can corner the market. Because even when we think of Apple Computer and we think, oh, they're so innovative, but the history of Apple Computer was they were looking at other people's technologies, quickly copying that, and they were better at executing around those ideas than the competitor was. Right. And then they blocked them out. Right? Because they just had this, and even when they didn't have all the money in the world to scale, they were able to move faster around those ideas once they got them in motion. So it may be the idea here, which is, what is the thing where I either have the unique capacity that nobody else has, or I can corner the supply chain on this particular thing, whether it's a physical thing or an idea. Is there a way that you can do that, or that you can trademark it, copyright it, whatever that is, that gives you the advantage?
Yeah. So I've got a marketer's brain on this. And so forgive me, I know we're already over time, but to be philosophical for a second, it's funny to me how we don't think of Apple as cornering the market as like this noble thing. We think of this in a David and Goliath kind of scenario, when David corners the market on soft pumps, right, for his soap. We think, oh, that's a great story. Yeah, but when Apple Computer corners the market, we think, oh, a giant bully just getting more like, and it's amazing to me, like it's the same behavior, but we respect it with the little guy and we kind of hate it when the big guy does it.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes it's kind of a challenge of equals. Like right now, there's this big war between Smucker's, which makes the Uncrustables peanut butter and jelly, rounds, and Trader Joe's is trying to do their own version. Now, Uncrustables has been around a long time. In fact, one of the biggest consumers of Uncrustables, NFL players. The amount of Uncrustables that are consumed in NFL locker rooms and training rooms is staggering.
Is the best halftime treat, I bet, huh?
Yeah, right. Oh, it's like, I need calories. I need a little bit of fat. I got to get it down. It can't be messy. You're like, boom. Right. Well, here's Trader Joe's. Well, we can kind of do a version of that, right? Well, legal war. That's going to happen, right? So, but you and I and everybody else, we can come up with an idea. It's not just good enough, and the biggest thing in the end, by the way, great ideas are really a dime a dozen, or maybe it's a dime 100, because very few people have the discipline to actually begin to execute around the great idea, or even the pretty good idea.
Right, exactly. Okay, fantastic. Good conversation for a Sunday afternoon. Thanks very much, Scott.
Indeed.